The afternoon sun filtered through the biodome's transparent ceiling as Kalen knelt beside the communal washing basin in Sector 7's residential courtyard. Around him, the mixed-species neighborhood of the Galactic Station buzzed with its usual activity. Threxians discussing trade routes, Valorians tending their crystalline gardens, and Nephim juveniles practicing their telepathic exercises under parental supervision. Kalen hummed softly as he scrubbed his work uniform against the old-fashioned washboard. Most species on the station used sonic cleaners or molecular disruptors for their garments, but Kalen preferred the manual method. There was something meditative about the rhythm, the feel of water and fabric, the simple satisfaction of watching dirt give way to cleanliness. He didn't notice the first few arrivals. A small rustle here, a curious chirp there. But when a tiny paw reached into his washing bucket, Kalen looked up and froze at a Kryn cub, no bigger than a house cat, with silver fur and enormous violet eyes, sat beside him, clutching one of his socks in its tiny hands. The cub tilted its head, studying the wet fabric with intense curiosity. "Well, hello there," Kalen said gently, recognizing the species. Kryn were rare on the station, highly intelligent but fiercely protective of their young. "Where's your parent?" The cub chirped and dunked the sock into the water, mimicking Kalen's earlier motions with surprising accuracy. Kalen chuckled. "All right then, little helper. Just be careful." He stopped mid-sentence as movement caught his eye. Two more cubs had appeared, these ones Valtorian, their scaled bodies shimmering in shades of blue and green. Then three Nephim younglings, their translucent forms floating just above the ground. Then more, and more. Within minutes, Kalen found himself surrounded by what had to be at least 50 cubs of various species, all clustering around his washing station with expressions of fascination. Some sat at the basin's edge, others perched on nearby benches or hovered in the air. All of them watched him with rapt attention. The Kryn cub, apparently the leader of this impromptu gathering, chirped authoritatively at the others. Kalen would later learn this was Vash, the youngling who had recently arrived with the Kryn delegation and had already earned a reputation for adventurous curiosity. "Okay," Kalen said slowly, glancing around at the sea of young faces. "This is unexpected." Vash chirped again and held up the sock, still dripping with soapy water. The message was clear. Show us. Kalen had spent 3 years on the station. He'd learned that different species had vastly different approaches to child-rearing. Most kept their young in controlled environments, away from strangers, particularly away from humans. Humans were seen as emotionally volatile, irrationally protective, and, most concerning to many species, dangerously empathetic toward young that weren't even their own. But here were 50 cubs, apparently having slipped away from their various guardians, all staring at him with expectation. What could he do? Send them away? They were children. "All right," Kalen said, making a decision. "Who wants to learn how to wash clothes?" The response was immediate and enthusiastic. Chirps, whistles, telepathic bursts of joy, and one small roar of approval filled the courtyard. Kalen divided them into groups. The tactile species, Kryn, Valtorian, and a few others, got washboards and small pieces of fabric. The telekinetic Nephim younglings practiced moving wet clothes from the wash basin to the rinse water. The airborne Pixith cubs learned to shake out garments to remove excess water. Even the crystalline Quarian younglings, who couldn't touch water directly, were given the job of sorting clean from dirty. Vash appointed himself as assistant supervisor, scampering between groups and chirping instructions that the other cubs somehow understood despite the language barrier. It wasn't long before adult residents began to notice the Threxian mother rushed into the courtyard, her forearms gesticulating wildly. "What is happening here? Where's my Crix?" Kalen looked up from helping a Valtorian cub wring out a washcloth. "Your cub is over there, learning to rinse. They're doing great. You allowed my child to work?" The Threxian's translator rendered her tone as somewhere between horror and confusion. "It's not work," Kalen said calmly. "It's playing. They're having fun." More parents arrived. A Nephim elder, his translucent form pulsing with agitation. 2 Kryn adults, their fur bristling with alarm. A Valtorian guardian whose scales had turned a shocked pale yellow. The courtyard filled with adult voices, some angry, some confused, all demanding to know why their precious younglings were engaged in manual labor with a human. Kalen stood, raising his hands peacefully. I understand your concern. But look at them. The adults fell silent, actually observing their children for the first time since arriving. The cubs worked together with joy that transcended species. Vash supervised a Nephim youngling helping a Quarian child, species that rarely interacted due to their incompatible biologies. Valtorian and Kryn cubs laughed together as they splashed in the water, forming friendships that would have taken their parents months of diplomatic negotiation to approve. The Pixith younglings had formed an aerial brigade, creating a precise system for drying clothes that impressed even their typically stoic parents. They're supposed to be in educational pods, a Nephim elder protested weakly. Learning quantum mathematics. They're learning cooperation, Kalen replied. Problem solving. Motor skills. Social bonding across species lines. A small voice, Vash's chirp, cut through the adult conversation. The Kryn cub stood on the edge of the washing basin, holding up a perfectly clean shirt for Kalen to see. Pride radiated from his small form. Good job, buddy, Kalen said warmly, and Vash's chirp of happiness made several adult observers pause. The Kryn mother stepped forward. Her fur was no longer bristled. You praised him. Of course, Kalen said, confused. He did excellent work. We do not praise for task completion, she said slowly. We acknowledge efficiency, but praise implies emotional attachment to outcome. Kalen looked at the cub, then back at the mother. He's proud of himself. That deserves recognition. The adults exchanged glances, the universal gesture of beings confronting something that didn't fit their worldview. A Valtorian guardian spoke next. Why do you let them play with water and fabric? This serves no productive purpose. It serves every purpose, Kalen said. They're learning that work can be joyful, that helping others feels good, that cooperation across differences creates something beautiful. He gestured at the now clean clothes hanging on improvised lines the cubs had constructed. And they're learning that they're capable of more than they thought. The courtyard had grown quiet. 50 cubs and at least 30 adults watched Kalen with expressions ranging from confusion to dawning understanding. Vash chirped and tugged on his mother's leg fur, then pointed at the washing basin with clear intent. Can we do this again? The Kryn mother looked at her son, then at Kalen, then at the other cubs who were now clustering around their parents with similar requests. Humans, she said finally, her translator managing to convey both exasperation and reluctant admiration, have the strangest approach to child development in the known galaxy. Maybe, Kalen said with a smile. But the cubs seem happy. As if on cue, all 50 younglings erupted in a chorus of species-specific sounds of agreement, a symphony of chirps, whistles, roars, and telepathic joy that made their parents flinch and Kalen laugh. The next day, Kalen returned to the courtyard to find Vash waiting with 20 other cubs and a pile of dirty laundry. Apparently, washing day had become a thing.